3 months into my pregnancy, my husband suddenly asked for a divorce. I rushed to find him, only to overhear him chatting with a friend, claiming he had been reborn, that he'd come back in this life specifically to make things right with his childhood sweetheart, Delia Pruitt. His friend was stunned. "Are you out of your mind? Your wife is 3 months pregnant, aren't you afraid she'll get so angry she'll terminate the pregnancy?" James Stevens laughed it off, utterly unconcerned. "Why would I worry? Linda Hayward went through 10 rounds of IVF to finally get pregnant, there's no way she'd just throw that away. Besides," he continued, "if she divorces me, she can go back to her parents, but Delia has no family. After divorcing that deadbeat, she's been raising her kid all alone. Do you know how hard that is? I've got it all figured out. Once Delia's child turns 10, I'll go back to Linda. It's only 5 years, no big deal." I stood frozen outside the door, numb to my core, my fingers moved on their own, dialing a number. "Hello, I'd like to schedule an abortion, as soon as possible." Later, James deliberately arranged for us to finalize our divorce on the same day he and Delia would register their marriage. But this time, things were different. That day, the man who had always been so aloof, so coldly composed, looked like he'd lost his mind, his eyes locked onto my flat stomach, his voice cracking with something close to hysteria. "Where's my child? Where's our child? You promised me you wanted to have a baby with me. Linda, are you sure you want to go through with this? After everything you went through for this baby?" My mother's voice broke over the phone, and guilt twisted in my chest. She had been the happiest person in the world when she found out I was pregnant. She knew what it had cost me. A full year of choking down bitter herbal medicine, 9 failed IVF cycles. It wasn't until the 10th attempt that I finally conceived. The moment the test results came back positive, my mother had wept with joy. She believed that with a child, James and I would finally settle into a real marriage, that he would step up, become a responsible husband, learn to put family first. But today, I realized how terribly wrong we had both been. The phone rang, sharp and insistent. I answered mechanically. James's voice cut through, cold and harsh. "Linda, how much longer are you going to drag this out? Even if I can't divorce you while you're pregnant, the moment that baby is born, I'm filing immediately. And let's be real, raising a child costs money. You've done nothing but sit at home since we got married, eating my food, spending my money. All you do is a little housework, that's it. No one's going to want a woman who just gave birth and comes with a brat attached. You have no income, no prospects. When the time comes, you won't get to keep the child, you won't get to keep me, you'll have nothing." Every word dripped with contempt. He reduced everything I'd given to this marriage, every sacrifice, every exhausting day, to nothing, and he called my baby a brat. It felt like a blade dragging across my heart, slicing it open all over again. "James," my voice came out quiet, steady. He went silent on the other end. "I agree to the divorce." A pause, then his tone shifted, bright with barely contained excitement. "Really? Great, let's do it in 5 days." His voice softened, turning almost coaxing. "Linda, don't worry, I just want to take care of Delia and her child, I won't cross any lines. Focus on your health, have the baby safely, I'll come visit you and the child once a month. I've already bought so many clothes for the baby, I even picked out a name." He sounded almost giddy, but my mind was already drifting, detaching from his words. In that moment, I knew I had truly let him go. A soft chime broke through the haze, a text notification. My gaze dropped to the screen. "Dear Miss Hayward, your abortion procedure is scheduled for 3 days from now." That night, I drifted into a hazy sleep. Suddenly, I found myself standing in a frozen wasteland, the blizzard raged with terrifying force, the cold cutting straight to my bones, my whole body went rigid, and just as I was about to collapse, a gentle warmth spread from my belly, a soft, childlike voice called out beside my ear, "Mommy." I trembled, instinctively reaching to embrace it. The little orb of light was so small, I could hold it completely in both hands, yet it was so warm that tears nearly spilled from my eyes. "I'm sorry." I whispered the apology, and then tiny, warm fingers gently wiped the tears from my face. The child's voice was impossibly tender, filled with infinite longing and reluctance to part. I tried to grasp those little fingers, but the child's form grew fainter and fainter. "No." In that moment, my heart felt like it was being carved out. I desperately tried to hold on. "Baby!" I jolted awake from the nightmare, a dull ache throbbed in my lower belly, but before I could gather my thoughts, a gentle male voice reached me. "Nightmare?" James sat at the edge of my bed, his face full of concern. "Why are you here?" He smiled helplessly. "This is our home, why wouldn't I be?" "Linda, you..." Before he could finish, a child's shrill cry cut him off. The next second, the door slammed open and a 5-year-old boy charged in like a cannonball. "Daddy." It was Delia's son, Charlie Abbott. The boy had complained that not having a father made him a target for bullying. Without hesitation, James let him call him daddy and treated him like his own son. Charlie hugged James from behind. James asked, "Didn't we agree you'd wait outside like a good boy?" The child glared at me with venom in his eyes. I was scared the bad woman would bully daddy. Then, before anyone could react, he scrambled onto the bed, jumped up, and stomped down hard on my stomach. Ah! I'd barely slept the night before, my head was spinning, and in that split second, there was no time to dodge. His foot landed squarely on my lower abdomen, searing pain tore through me, my back arched involuntarily, cold sweat breaking out across my skin. "Linda!" James yanked Charlie away and grabbed my shoulders, his face urgent. "What's wrong?" I couldn't speak through the pain, black spots swam across my vision, my belly felt like it was being twisted apart. I tried to call for help, but a woman's shrill voice drowned me out. "Charlie!" "James!" Delia rushed in, seeing Charlie sitting on the edge of the bed looking dazed. She immediately pulled him into her arms. "Charlie, what happened? Did you get into trouble again?" Charlie burst into tears. "I didn't do anything. I didn't even step on Auntie, but she screamed so loud." James's hands on me went still. Delia's eyes instantly reddened. "James, maybe we should just forget about what we discussed before. Charlie and I are all alone in this world, we just can't compete." Her voice cracked, her expression was pure devastation, as if she'd suffered 1,000 injustices. She didn't finish, but James understood her meaning immediately. "Don't talk nonsense," he said firmly. "I told you I'd take care of you both, I won't go back on my word." His cold gaze fell on me. "Linda, are you really so desperate to keep me that you'd frame a child?" His grip tightened around my wrist, so hard I heard my bones creak, but the worst pain was in my belly. The little life connected to my blood was slipping away. I thought of last night's dream. Instinctively, I clutched at James's sleeve, my voice weak and trembling. "Help me, my stomach hurts so much." But James's face remained cold. "Stop pretending, in my past life, you gave birth to our son just fine, nothing's going to happen this time either." The pain was so intense I couldn't form words, perhaps my expression was too agonized to ignore. James seemed half convinced and moved to help me up. But Delia grabbed his arm. "James, let me take a look, I've been through childbirth before, I have experience." She pushed Charlie into James's arms. He seemed about to say something, but the boy's whimpering cut him off. James cradled the child carefully, patting his back as he drifted toward the window, murmuring soft reassurances. Delia approached me and slowly pulled back the covers, her eyes widened in what looked like surprise. Bright red blood was seeping from between my legs, soaking through my nightgown. She smiled. "Oh my, there's nothing wrong at all." "Linda, you're being so dramatic." James's expression turned icy. "Linda, I knew you were faking it." Delia gave him a coy smile. "Wives are meant to be pampered, aren't they? If she's this delicate, you'll just have to spoil her a little more. If she can't handle this much pain, imagine what childbirth will be like, you'd better book her an epidural in advance." Then her face shifted to something pitiful. "Though I heard epidurals and C-sections can affect the baby, for Charlie's sake, I just gritted my teeth and pushed through." James scoffed. "She's not getting an epidural, my son will be well behaved, she'll deliver naturally without any of that." Pride dripped from every word, a flash of jealousy flickered through Delia's eyes. By then, my consciousness was fading. In the last moment before everything went dark, I saw Delia pulling him toward the door. Despair, endless and absolute, crashed over me. When I woke again, the sharp smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils. A wave of pain tore through my lower body, I groaned involuntarily, and someone gripped my hand tight. "Linda!" "Mom, Dad." My mother's usually immaculate hair was disheveled, her eyes swollen and red. When she saw me awake, her voice broke. "Linda, it's okay, it's going to be okay." It took me a moment to register where I was, lying on a gurney being rushed toward the operating room. "Doctor, the patient is hemorrhaging. We may not be able to save the baby. Where's her husband? We need his signature for the procedure." "She's my daughter, I can sign." "Doctor, please, you have to save her. Hospital policy requires the patient's husband for emergency procedures of this nature, it may affect her future fertility." The doctor's urgent commands, my mother's pleas, my father's furious voice, all tangled together in chaos. I lay there gasping, fighting wave after wave of agony. Then I heard my father on the phone with James. "James Stevens. Get to this hospital, now." The voice on the other end sounded surprised. "Dad? Is Linda throwing another fit about going to the hospital?" Ever since she got pregnant, she's been paranoid, always convinced something's wrong with the baby. "It's just pregnancy." A friend of mine was unclogging toilets, changing light bulbs, and hauling packages when she was months along. "Linda is just too delicate." Each word was an accusation. My father's rage finally boiled over. His voice came out through gritted teeth. If you don't get here right now, the Hayward family will never let this go. James had built his company himself, but many of his connections had come through my father. There was a hesitation on the other end of the line. But just then, a woman's startled cry came from the other end of the line. "Oh no! James, Charlie just threw up. Let me see." James's voice turned urgent, then hurried. "Dad, you really need to stop spoiling Linda so much. Something's come up here. I have to go. I'll talk to her properly tonight." Click. The dial tone echoed through the corridor. After a long moment, my father ground out through clenched teeth. "Proceed with the surgery. Her husband is dead to me. Any problems, I'll take responsibility. I'll sign whatever needs signing." Cold anesthetic crept into my veins. My eyelids grew heavier, but my body felt lighter and lighter, as if it might float away. When I woke again, I lay still for a moment, lost. My hand drifted to my stomach. Just an hour ago, there had been a tiny life here, connected to me by blood and bone. Now there was nothing. Linda. My mother watched me with worried eyes. I managed a weak smile. "Mom, I'm okay." I learned later that I'd been unconscious for 2 days and a night. I reached for my phone. The call log was empty. Only my chat with James showed any activity, a few cold messages. All sent this morning. Don't forget, 3 days from now, Civil Affairs Office, divorce. Still not responding? You think ignoring me will change anything? Linda, this divorce is happening whether you like it or not. Sometimes I really wish Delia and Charlie were my family. Charlie's been raised so well, I can't imagine what kind of person our son would have become with you raising him. I stared at those final messages for a long time. Then, slowly, I typed, "Okay." I hit send. Without hesitation, I deleted his contact. The hospital's fluorescent lights were blinding. Clutching the miscarriage report, I walked alone down the corridor toward the room where they kept what remained of my child. I needed to bring him home, give him a proper burial. The maternity ward was full of couples. Expectant mothers glowed with joy, their partners hovering close. I held the small box in my arms, and it felt like my heart had been sealed inside it along with that tiny body. "James, thank you so much for today," a sweet, honeyed voice cut through the air. I looked up. Our eyes met. James was holding Charlie's hand. Delia clung to his arm. Standing together, they looked like a real family. James glanced at me, and his expression shifted. His gaze dropped straight to my flat stomach. He strode toward me, irritation written across his face. "What are you doing here?" Delia laughed lightly. "Looking for James?" "Oh, Linda, you really don't need to keep such close tabs on him. I just felt a little unwell, so he accompanied me to the hospital, that's all." "Is this really necessary?" James's voice dripped with impatience. "Following me around like this? You're pregnant, you shouldn't be running around hospitals for no reason. Don't you know that's bad for the baby?" His lip curled. "That child must have terrible luck to end up in your womb." "Didn't I tell you? Our child was perfectly healthy, a genius, even, got into a top university at 16. Yes, in his version of things, in that past life he claimed to remember, we had a brilliant, healthy child. So why had it turned out like this?" I clutched the small box tighter against my chest. I'd heard that children who die before their time become trapped in the cycle of rebirth, unable to find peace. So I'd ordered this box specially made, carved with lotus flowers, and arranged for a monk to chant sutras for 49 days. I hoped he would have another chance, that in his next life, he would find parents who truly loved him. "Daddy." A child's voice broke through my thoughts. Charlie was staring at the box in my arms, and suddenly his hand shot out to grab it. "I want that box. Don't touch it." I slapped his hand away hard and pulled the box tight against my body. The sharp crack echoed through the corridor. Charlie froze for a split second before bursting into wails. A flicker of shock crossed James's face, but he immediately hardened his expression. "What do you think you're doing? He's just a child. Why are you taking it out on him?" I clutched the box to my chest, glaring at James with every ounce of hatred I possessed. "James Stevens, I hate you, I hate you." Each word dripped venom. The taste of blood filled my mouth. He seemed stunned that I, always so compliant, would say such things. His brow furrowed. "Linda, you're being completely unreasonable." Without another word, he pulled something from his pocket. "I'll trade you this for that broken box. Happy now?" It was an exquisite longevity lock pendant. I'd once mentioned wanting to buy one for our baby. He dismissed it, told me to focus on the pregnancy and stop overthinking. "Isn't this what you wanted to give the child? Take it." Before he could finish, Charlie's crying turned shrill. "Daddy. That's mine. You ordered it for me." Embarrassment flickered across James's face, quickly masked. "I'll get you something even better later." "No. You can't give away my things." Charlie charged at me, shoving me with all his strength. Caught off guard, I crashed to the floor, the box flew from my hands. "Give it back!" My pupils contracted, despair clawed at my throat as I watched Charlie snatch the box and sprint to the end of the corridor. With one vicious motion, he hurled it down the garbage disposal chute. I lunged after it like a woman possessed, but James seized me, his grip iron tight. "Enough! It's just a box. Were you going to hit Charlie? That piece of trash belongs in the garbage. Now apologize to Charlie and Delia." The commotion drew hospital staff. My attending physician rushed over. "James latched onto this like a weapon. Your doctor's here. Do you really want to keep embarrassing yourself? Linda, I'm telling you now, I will never accompany you to another prenatal checkup. And once you give birth, that child is mine, you'll never see him again." The doctor went still, the words slipped out before she could stop them. Prenatal checkup? But Miss Hayward already miscarried. The word hung in the sterile hospital air, suspended like a guillotine. Miscarried? James's voice was barely a whisper, the irritation completely wiped from his face, replaced by a slack-jawed stupidity. He looked from the doctor to me, then down to his hands, as if trying to piece together a puzzle that had suddenly caught fire. "What do you mean, miscarried?" he demanded, his voice rising, regaining that familiar edge of arrogant authority. "She's 3 months pregnant, my son is perfectly healthy, what kind of quack are you?" The doctor, a seasoned woman with graying hair and dark circles under her eyes, didn't flinch. Her gaze shifted from James to the screaming Charlie, and then settled back on James with absolute, freezing contempt. "Your wife was brought into the emergency room 2 days ago with severe placental abruption and massive hemorrhaging. We called you," the doctor said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet register. "We needed your signature to perform an emergency DNC to save her life. You hung up on her father. You said you had something come up." The color drained from James's face, leaving him a sickening, ashen gray. His eyes slowly, mechanically, drifted toward Charlie. The boy was still wailing about his toy, tugging at Delia's skirt. Charlie jumped up and stomped down hard on my stomach. I could see the exact moment the memory played back in James's mind. His chest heaved, he took a stumbling step backward. No, that's impossible. In my past life my son was born safely. He was 16, he was muttering now, the delusion of his rebirth cracking against the concrete wall of reality. I didn't care about his realization, I didn't care about the horror dawning in his eyes. I pushed myself off the floor, the cold linoleum bit into my bare knees, but I felt nothing. My body was a hollowed-out shell, running purely on adrenaline and a terrifying, razor-sharp clarity. "Where does that chute lead?" I asked the doctor, my voice unrecognizable, raspy, dead. "Miss Hayward, you shouldn't be out of bed." "Where does it lead?" "The basement incinerator room," she said softly, "level B2, but the maintenance staff." I didn't wait for her to finish, I turned and walked toward the elevators. "Linda!" James lunged forward, grabbing my arm, his hand was trembling. "Linda, wait, the baby, our baby." I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I simply turned my head and looked at the hand gripping my arm, then up to his face. "Take your hand off me," I said. It wasn't a threat, it was a statement of absolute finality. He recoiled as if I had burned him. I stepped into the elevator. As the doors began to close, I saw Delia rushing to James, her face a mask of manufactured panic, pulling Charlie against her. "James, she's just being dramatic, the doctors make mistakes, let's just go." The steel doors shut, cutting off her shrill voice. The basement smelled of bleach, damp concrete, and rotting organic waste. I found the maintenance worker near a row of massive industrial bins. When I told him what had happened, his face softened with pity. He stopped the compactor and helped me drag the heavy plastic bags out. For 20 minutes, I dug through bloody gauze, discarded food, and medical waste. My hospital gown was stained with coffee grounds and God knows what else. My fingernails were cracked and black with filth. And then, I found it. The small, lotus-carved wooden box. It had popped open upon impact, but the inner silk pouch was still securely tied. I fell to my knees on the dirty concrete, clutching the box to my chest. The warmth I had felt in my dream the night before, that tiny, fleeting ball of light, seemed to pulse faintly against my breastbone one last time before fading into the cold basement air. "I've got you," I whispered into the darkness. "Mommy's got you, we're going home." 3 days later, I stood outside the Civil Affairs office. The sky was an unforgiving, cloudless blue. The winter wind whipped my coat around my legs, but I felt warm. For the first time in years, I felt like the air in my lungs belonged entirely to me. James arrived 10 minutes late. He looked horrendous. He wore the same suit from 2 days ago, heavily wrinkled, his eyes were bloodshot, and he had a dark shadow of stubble across his jaw. He didn't look like the confident, aloof CEO who had coldly dictated the terms of our marriage. He looked like a man waking up from a bender to find his house had burned down. Delia was with him, standing half a step behind, wearing a pristine white wool coat. She looked radiant, practically vibrating with suppressed excitement. When James saw me, he flinched, he took a step forward, leaving Delia behind. Linda, his voice cracked, he looked at my flat stomach, then up at my face. You actually went through with it, you're really divorcing me. That was the agreement, I said evenly, pulling the paperwork from my bag. Sign here, and we can go inside to finalize the stamp. He didn't take the pen, he stared at me, his eyes wide and frantic. I didn't know, Linda, I swear to God, I didn't know the baby was gone. When he jumped on the bed, I thought you were just exaggerating, because in my past life, you were always so resilient, you never complained, you gave birth to a genius, I just thought. You thought you were a god, I interrupted, my voice devoid of anger, which seemed to terrify him more than if I had screamed. You thought the universe revolved around your memories, you thought you could throw away the mother of your child, humiliate her, discard her, and still claim the reward of the child she built with her own blood and bone. Linda, please, he reached for my hand, I stepped back. Sign the papers, James. No, he shook his head, panic setting in. No, we can fix this, I know things, I know the future, we can build another company, we can do IVF again, I'll fire Delia, I'll send her away. James! Delia gasped from behind him, her face twisting in shock. What are you saying? You promised me. You said you came back for me. James didn't even look at her. Linda, I only felt guilty about Delia because of how her life ended before, it was just guilt. You're my wife, you're the mother of my son, we are supposed to be together. I looked at this man, the man I had choked down bitter herbs for, the man I had endured countless needles and brutal hormone injections for. He wasn't a tragic romantic hero righting the wrongs of a past life, he was just a coward, a selfish, greedy coward who wanted the loyalty of a good wife and the thrill of a tragic mistress, all neatly arranged for his convenience. Your son is dead, James, I said softly, and he died because you let another man's child stomp him to death while you watched. He died because when I was bleeding out, you were busy coddling the boy who killed him. James let out a strangled, breathless sound. He doubled over slightly, clutching his stomach as if I had driven a knife into his ribs. You don't get to have a future with me, I said, sliding the pen onto the clipboard and holding it out. Sign the papers, or my father's lawyers will freeze your company's assets by noon, and we will drag this out until you are entirely bankrupt. He looked at my eyes and saw nothing but a graveyard. With trembling hands, he took the pen and scrawled his name. 30 minutes later, I walked out with my divorce certificate. I didn't look back, I didn't need to. I knew Delia was already dragging him toward the marriage registration window, her claws sunk deep into his arm, terrified he would slip away. Let her have him, they deserved each other. The first month after the divorce was spent in absolute quiet. My parents brought me back to our family estate. My mother cooked me restorative soups, crying silently as she watched me eat. My father, normally a boisterous, jovial man, aged 10 years, he spent hours in his study, making quiet phone calls. I didn't ask what he was doing, I knew. James had built Stevens Logistics from the ground up, a fact he loved to flaunt. He prided himself on being a self-made man, but he conveniently forgot that the initial seed capital came from my father. He forgot that his 3 largest contracts were awarded to him because the clients were my father's old golf buddies. He forgot that the massive warehouse facility his entire operation relied on was leased from my uncle at a fraction of the market rate. By week 3, the lease on the warehouse was abruptly terminated. By week 4, 2 of his major clients pulled their contracts, citing restructuring. By the end of the second month, I was fully healed. I threw away my oversized maternity clothes, I cut my hair into a sharp, sleek bob, I put on a tailored suit and walked into Hayward Enterprises, taking the office right next to my father's. It was time to get to work. Meanwhile, James's life was unraveling at a spectacular speed. It started with small things, rumors leaking through our mutual social circles. Delia had immediately moved into the penthouse we once shared. She had completely redecorated, burning through James's cash to erase any trace of me. She enrolled Charlie in the most elite international private school in the city. But Delia, having lived in poverty and resentment for years, didn't know how to handle wealth. She treated James's money like a bottomless well. She threw lavish parties to show off her new status, alienating James's actual business partners with her tacky, grasping behavior. And then there was Charlie. 3 months after the divorce, Charlie was expelled. I heard about it from a friend whose daughter attended the same school. Charlie had thrown a fit because another boy had a limited edition toy. When the boy refused to hand it over, Charlie pushed him down a flight of stairs, breaking the child's collarbone. The parents of the injured boy were not people you messed with. They threatened to sue James into oblivion. James, already bleeding money from my father's silent embargo, had to pay a massive out-of-court settlement to keep it quiet. I could only imagine the screaming matches in that penthouse. But the real fatal blow to James came from his own arrogance, his absolute, blind faith in his past life. Because he believed he knew the future, James aggressively leveraged his company to invest in a tech startup he remembered becoming a unicorn in his previous timeline. He sank millions into it, taking out high-interest loans to cover the capital. What James failed to realize was how the butterfly effect worked. In his past life, he only met the founder of that startup at a charity gala my father had dragged us to. In his past life, I had stayed up for 3 nights reading the startup's prospectus, pointing out a fatal flaw in their management structure, forcing James to demand a seat on the board before investing, which ultimately saved the company. This time, I wasn't there. James just threw the money blindly at them. 6 months later, the startup CEO absconded with the funds, fleeing the country. The company filed for bankruptcy. James lost everything. It was late November, almost exactly a year since the miscarriage, when I saw him again. I was attending the annual Chamber of Commerce gala. I wore a backless emerald green gown, holding a glass of champagne, flanked by 3 industry executives who were actively trying to court Hayward Enterprises for a joint venture. I was laughing at a joke one of them made when the crowd parted slightly. James stood near the entrance. I almost didn't recognize him. The man who had once been so fastidious about his appearance now looked gaunt. His suit hung off his frame, slightly shiny at the elbows, his hair was thinning, threaded with coarse gray, and his eyes had the frantic, sunken look of a cornered animal. He wasn't invited, he had clearly sneaked in. His eyes locked onto me, and for a second, a flash of pure, unadulterated longing crossed his face. He started toward me, ignoring the murmurs of the security guards trying to intercept him. "Linda." The executives beside me stopped laughing, stepping slightly in front of me in a protective stance. "Mr. Stevens," one of them said coldly, "I don't think you're on the guest list." "I need to speak to my wife," James rasped, his eyes completely fixed on my face. "Ex-wife," I corrected smoothly, handing my champagne glass to a passing waiter. I placed a hand on the arm of the executive beside me. "It's fine, gentlemen, give us a moment." They stepped back, though they kept a watchful eye on him. James stepped closer, and the smell of cheap scotch hit me. He looked at my dress, my hair, the relaxed, powerful posture of my body. "You look beautiful," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You look exactly like you did in the old days, before I spent a year destroying my body to give you a child you didn't want." I offered with a cool, polite smile. He flinched. "Linda, everything is falling apart. The investments, they didn't work, the timeline is broken, nothing is happening the way it's supposed to." He looked around frantically, as if the universe itself was hiding behind the curtains, playing a cruel joke on him. "In my past life, by this year, we had just taken the company public, you were the vice president, we were on the cover of Forbes. What happened? Why is everything ruined?" I looked at him, and suddenly, all the remaining anger evaporated, leaving only a profound, almost clinical pity. "You really don't get it, do you, James?" He blinked, confusion warring with desperation. "You thought your success was a fixed point in time, you thought you were the genius." I took a step closer, my voice dropping to a whisper meant only for him. "Who do you think vetted your contracts? Who do you think smoothed over the insults you carelessly threw at your partners? Who sat up until 3 a.m., rewriting your business proposals because you didn't understand the market dynamics?" His breath hitched, his eyes widened as the realization began to crack through his delusions. "You weren't reborn to be a god, James, you were reborn to find out exactly what you were without me." I smiled, cold and sharp. "You are nothing, just an arrogant, mediocre man who got lucky because a woman loved him enough to build him an empire." "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "No, Linda, please, I know I was wrong, I was blinded by guilt over Delia, but I see it now, I see what she really is. She's bleeding me dry, and Charlie is a monster, he hates me, he screams at me every day, he's not my son, he's nothing like the boy we had." Tears began to spill over his sunken cheeks. He reached out, trying to grab my hand, but I stepped out of reach. "Linda, take me back, please, I'll get rid of them, I'll divorce Delia tomorrow, I have the memories, I still know things about the future. We can rebuild. We can have our genius son again. I know we can." The mention of my child, the child he discarded, the child whose ashes I had buried alone while he played house with his murderer, ignited a sudden, icy fire in my chest. "Our son is dead," I said, my voice ringing out clearly in the quiet space that had formed around us, "and he is never coming back. You traded him for a woman who views you as an ATM and a child who will drain the very life out of you." "I'll leave them," he begged, his voice breaking into a sob, dropping to his knees right there on the gala floor. People were openly staring now, whispers rippled through the ballroom. "I'll abandon them. Just let me come home." I looked down at the pathetic creature groveling at my feet. "You can't abandon them, James," I said softly, leaning down slightly so only he could hear my final verdict, "because you are bankrupt. Delia has been secretly siphoning whatever cash you have left into an offshore account under her name for the past 2 months, my investigators flagged it last week." He froze, the tears stopped halfway down his cheeks. "What?" "She knows you're sinking, and she's already been seen at the country club with Richard Vance. You know Richard, don't you? He loves taking other men's cast-offs." James let out a guttural sound, something between a scream and a choke. "Security," I called out, straightening my posture and turning away from him, "this man is trespassing." As the guards grabbed him by the arms and dragged him toward the exit, he didn't even fight back. He just stared at me, his eyes wide and vacant, the total collapse of his mind and his perfect future finally complete. The end of James Stevens barely made the back pages of the financial news. Stevens Logistics filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy right after the new year. As I had warned him, Delia vanished the moment the creditors came knocking. She took every piece of jewelry, every designer bag, and the remaining liquid cash she had squirreled away, leaving James with millions in debt and an eviction notice on the penthouse. She moved into Richard Vance's villa, but karma is rarely a gentle collector. Richard was not James. He was a notoriously violent man who liked his women silent and his household immaculate. Within a month, Charlie threw one of his legendary tantrums and smashed a Ming vase. Richard didn't coddle him, he threw them both out onto the street with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The last I heard, Delia was working night shifts at a dilapidated diner on the outskirts of the city, looking twice her age, dragging a rebellious, violent Charlie from one cheap motel to another. As for James, it was the anniversary of the day I lost my baby. The city was blanketed in a heavy, blinding snowstorm. I had driven out to the temple on the mountain. The monk had finished the year-long chanting for my child spirit. I placed a fresh bouquet of white lilies next to the beautiful new lotus urn we had enshrined there. I closed my eyes, pressing my hands together. You are free now, little one, I thought into the quiet sanctuary. Don't look back, find a home full of light in your next life. For the first time, when I closed my eyes, I didn't see the frozen wasteland from my nightmares. I didn't feel the paralyzing cold. I just felt a gentle, receding warmth, like a soft kiss against my cheek, and then, total peace. When I stepped out of the temple, the snow was falling heavily, painting the world in pristine, untouched white. My driver opened the door to the car, and I slid into the warm interior. As we drove down the winding mountain road, we passed a figure trudging through the snow on the shoulder of the highway. He had no coat, just a threadbare suit jacket. His shoulders were hunched, his head bowed against the biting wind. He was stumbling, looking like a ghost trapped in a purgatory of his own making, desperately searching for a timeline he would never find. Miss Hayward, my driver asked, glancing in the rearview mirror, should I slow down? Looks like someone is stranded. I looked out the tinted window. I watched James Stevens fade into the swirling blizzard, becoming nothing more than a dark speck, and then, disappearing completely. I settled back against the leather seat and pulled my scarf a little tighter. No, I said, looking straight ahead at the road opening up before me, keep driving, we're going home.